Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast. Today, we have a very, very, very special guest. We have with us Jeff Hayzlett. Am I saying that correctly?
Hayzlett, you got it.
Hayzlett,
Yeah.
Jeff Hayzlett, former CMO of a Fortune 100 company, entrepreneur, celebrity speaker, Hall of Fame speaker. He's spoken on some of the biggest stages in the world and has too many accolades for me to even do justice to in this 15, 20-second explanation. So I'm going to let him introduce himself to you all. But I am thrilled about this conversation. Jeff, welcome to Speak Your Way to Cash.
Well, I love anything that's speaking and anything that has cash in the word or the title. So we're ready to go.
Amazing. So this show primarily, we have an audience of speakers and entrepreneurs, thought leaders who are listening, who are trying to monetize and add a stream of revenue to their businesses. How has speaking played a role in your success, both in corporate and as an entrepreneur?
Well, I've been a professional speaker, I would say, since about 1986. About when I was turned 26, I started. I used to hang out with Zig Ziglar and some of the greatest speakers of all times. And then, of course, was put in the Hall of Fame as well. So that was a kind of a great cap on toward the end of my career. But yeah, speaking's been a part of it, and speaking's going to continue to be part of it. Before COVID hit, I was doing about 160 keynotes a year, averaging about $27,000 a keynote of some range or thereabouts. And now this year with COVID, I did well over 340 speeches. So I did a lot more. So, the opportunities are still there. The way in which you monetize has changed a great deal, given the fact that this is a much more virtual world than ever before. And so digital is playing a big part of it, but it's a big portion of it. Speaking, though, is for most speakers, it's not a destination. It's a tool to be used. And that's the way you should probably want to look at it, is how can I use speaking or podcasting or writing or book or whatever it might be to be able to make myself a media company and be able to put myself out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for those of our listeners who don't know about your corporate background, and you all can do a quick Google search on him after or while you're listening to this, but let us know what is your corporate background? How would you describe what you were able to accomplish in corporate, change leadership, some of your background that has probably helped you to be such a sought after speaker?
Well, without question, the experience I've had, but I bought and sold over 250 businesses in my career, $25 billion in transactions. My last company that I was at was in a Fortune 100 company as a CMO, managing a $17 billion marketing budget of a $187 billion company. I serve on 14 boards today. 3 of those boards are corporate, meaning not corporate, but public companies. So trading on the stock exchange of either some country or somewhere, and now doing and leading my own business, the C-Suite Network, and so all those things have led me to be able to do the things I'm doing today.
Absolutely. And for people who are listening, who are kind of at maybe not the beginning of their career, but the beginning of their speaking journey. So they've been in corporate 15, 20 years. They've rose through the ranks in whatever organization that they're in, and they're looking to monetize that expertise. Where would you say they should start?
Well, first of all, if they're in the corporate world, they shouldn't give up their title. The second, hang on to that title for as long as you can, because once you're out on your own, you're on your own. And so you want to hang on to that title and that expertise. But then what you really, truly want to start to do is look at what's my intellectual property? What are the things that I'm going to be able to, trade on? And so the title's part of that. Your experience is part of that. But really, truly, it's the value that you're giving to somebody else. So what's the category you're going to own? It's one thing to be Jeff Hayzlett, the speaker, but what's the category we own? And today I own what's called the C-Suite Network, or C-Suite. So if you look at anything given C-Suite, you're going to find our company, or you're going to find me, because we went out and said, we're going to stake out that territory. So what territory are you going to stake out? What are you going to become the expert of, or the leader of, or the category owner of, whether it be, in terms of empowerment, or just name any category you want. But what is it that you're going to be, and become that leader of the category? So become a thought leader. And if you want to be a thought leader, there's a lot of things that go with that. You have to create content. You have to be cited. You have to even have haters. and people that dislike you. So, which, if we measure that, I got a few of those. So that's good.
So,
and sometimes a few stalkers, quite frankly.
oh, wow.
That happens a lot too. You get a lot of that in the business, depending, especially if I used to have my own primetime television show. And of course, I was a judge on Celebrity Apprentice for 3 years. But then I went on to have my own show on Bloomberg, a primetime television show. And that leads to its own kind of good and bad and ugly to it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I don't know if I would say speaking of haters, but speaking of your status, I think one of the things that I read about you was that you were a celebrity CMO when you were CMO of Kodak at one point. And how were you able to build that up? And I ask because so many of the people in our audience are in corporate and they're speaking on the side, but they kind of feel that they need to hide who they are in corporate to build their business, and they're worried about what their company would think about the press. I'm a former corporate lawyer, and my former firm did not love that I was on television as a legal expert and doing all of these things. So how did you build that celebrity CMO status? And was the company aware of the branding you were going to do, the personal branding you were going to do to kind of raise the profile of the company as well?
That's a great question and a great thought pattern that you have to be able to think through, or at least, in terms of a train of thought of what your strategy is going to be. So when I went to Eastman Kodak, it was in some big trouble. And so the CEO said, look, you go out and put us back on the map and do whatever you have to do. And I said, I'm going to use every tool that's available. And that might be using me. He says, I don't care. So what happened was, in that case, he gave me the air cover to be able to do that. Now, I did take some flack without question inside the company because, hey, look what he's doing. Well, his belief was, look, he's selling the company. That's what I asked him to do. And he's using it the best way possible. And that is, he's using it for free. So he's making himself part of that. And I also had the persona. So you can't always carry that off either, quite frankly. So with not every corporate, officer we know, and you've been in that situation, can they'll be on TV. They ask them a question. They do this. Hey, you're on TV. Say something. Not only visual, but you got to say something too. You're on a podcast. You have to talk. So you need to be aware of what you can and cannot do if you're in the corporate world trying to break into that. But if you sell yourself, you're selling the company. Sell the company, sell yourself. That's really, truly what you're trying to do, especially if you're out of that corporate world. You are the brand. You are part of that brand. You're part of that promise delivered. So you really want to be very clear about what the conditions of satisfaction. Now, also understand that the risk that are involved with that, because Ashley, if you as a corporate lawyer were speaking about other companies on TV, not cool. Because that then puts your company at risk of being talked about. I'll give you a great example. Years ago, Toyota had some problems with brakes, or perceived problems with brakes. And the president of MSNBC kept calling me and said, Jeff, we want you on the show. We want you on the show. We want you to talk about this problem with Toyota. Hey, dude, I'm not coming on and talking about another company, because the second I start talking and dishing up on them, excuse me, they're going to be dishing up on my company, and we got enough problems. I don't need somebody else jumping in on them, right?
Yeah.
So those are the things you have to kind of think through when you get into that situation. But without question, one of the cool things that my CEO once told me, in fact, as I was planning to leave the company and I was going to go off and do my first bestseller, which was the mirror test, I said, look, I need to know what I can say about Kodak. I need to know what I can use. And his advice to me is, you can always use your title. You can always use your title. You can't talk about us. You can't talk about what we've been through. You can't talk about what we're inside, because you were inside. He said, but you can talk about what's public. And you can use your title. He says, you earn that. I can never take that away from you. And that was a really good advice, because when I sit down one time when I was doing the book, and I had to sit down, and we were doing a board meeting at New York Stock Exchange, and I'm in the boardroom of the New York Stock Exchange with our corporate legal team, going through my book page by page by page, because I gave them an advanced read before I left the company. And they're going, can't use that, can't use that, can't use that. So in my first book, even though a lot of that was lessons learned from Kodak is only mentioned in there, I think, about 21 times in the entire length of the book. So, and those were public kinds of things you can use. So these are things you got to really think through.
Yeah, no, and you brought up some really good considerations there. That was amazing advice. You can always use your title.
Yeah.
That is
Well, you
amazing
earned it.
advice. Yeah, you
You
earned
earned it. I mean, and you asked me about being celebrity CMO. How I got that because Forbes called me that.
Yeah, it was
Because
Forbes.
I was using media so much. Forbes magazine did a big article on me, front page, the cover, the whole bit, and said he's the celebrity CMO, and it was about how corporate executives are using the celebrityness or using the camera, using the media to put forth their agenda. And I was probably the one that was doing it more than anyone else out there. And now, of course, you see a lot of executives now utilizing the media to further the corporate agenda, which is a great tool.
Yeah, no, it is a great tool. One of the things that piqued my interest in reading some of your interviews from that 2009, 2010 period was, even though a lot of people would ask you about the health of the company and how the company was doing, and regardless of what they asked you, you always responded with a positive. Like, it didn't matter what the stat was, what the number was, you always responded with a positive. Where does that come from? Where do you get your confidence from? And how did you nurture that and hold on to it over time?
Well, who wants to be a pain in the ass? Who wants to be a Debbie Downer? I mean, look, there's enough bad news in the world. Someone's got to go out and give good news, and I always tell people, with a face like this, it deserves to be on TV. You have to be uplifting, even when people are writing you comments saying, hey, my wife's a physical trainer. Would you like her number? Like, what the heck is that about? Why would you do that to people? So, yeah, well, what is the job at that time? My job was to put the company in a good light and to continue to show the progress of the company. Even to this day, inside of my own company, I ask the other employees and I ask everybody to share good news all the time. Like today at C-Suite Radio, our podcast network, we set an all-time listening record again. So I said to the team, spread the news. Someone send a note out to let the team know. And here it is, 2 days left, and we've already set a record for the most listeners for a business podcast. This is phenomenal. So why wouldn't you want to tell people about that? Everybody loves winners. Everybody loves to be around winners. So even when you're not having the best game in the world, you can still be a winner. There's still a stat. You might have had Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron and some of the other greats of baseball had the worst strikeout records in the world. Guess what? They also had the best home run records of the world. So that's in essence the thing. So it's all about how you look at it and how you look at life. I could look at COVID and say COVID's been the most terrible thing in the world. It has been, without question. But there's been some good things that we've come out of COVID. We're spending more time at home. We never want to leave. We get to do interviews in shorts. We don't have to wear pants. This is freaking awesome. I am wearing pants, just so we're clear. But but you can do so much more, and you want to look at it from that perspective. And COVID, for a lot of us, especially for thought leaders, making us rethink our business model. How do we make money in our sleep? How do we make money when we can't go on stage? A $1 million speaker once, I was a part of the $1 million speaker group, I still am. And someone said, hey, I can't wait to walk on stage again. I said, I can't wait to never walk on another stage. Meaning, I like this. I love to be able to do this. And I'm doing virtual keynotes, which I was doing before, but now I do them all the time. And I can do 2 or 3 or 4 of them in a day. Hello, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. So there's different ways you can look at that. So you can sit there and whine that you're not getting as much, or whine that you're not, getting your global status at United. They're going to give it to you anyway. Or you're not a titanium member at Marriott anymore. Oh, get over it. I'm a titanium member in my own bed. This is awesome.
Yeah. No, okay. I really appreciate your outlook on that. And that's so critical for us to hang on to, especially now during COVID. So you've been inside of the marketing engine of some very large companies, and you run a very successful company now. You've bought and sold companies. What is the difference I'd love to hear your perspective on the difference between marketing and sales, and which strategies have really helped you to be successful in marketing?
Well, so marketing exists. Marketing, the definition of marketing is the inception of the idea all the way through customer satisfaction. Got it? That's the definition of marketing. Sometimes confused a little bit with communications or with advertising. Those are components. Those are pieces that you put under marketing. But really, truly, marketing is a strategy, and it's an implementation of that strategy. The idea all the way through customer satisfaction, and to serve sales, which goes out and sells those products and delivers those things for your customers. They're an extension, and I think they're two in a box. One can't exist without the other, although sometimes there's a lot of friction between the two. One's really responsible for driving the revenue. Now, marketing's responsible for also driving revenue, market share, price integrity in terms of the margins and net realized rates and everything else that we might drive. And so sales doesn't always work on all of those things, even though those are components of sales or of revenue. So that's how I would separate the two. And I've been on both sides of them, and I love them both. And I don't know that I could. It's like like my children. I have a beautiful daughter and a handsome son, and I don't think I could choose between the two of them. So I say they're both my favorites.
Okay, perfect.
I love selling. I got to tell you, I love selling. But I love coming up with new things in marketing and put the programs together and get it all done. But I really like selling too.
Yeah, before law school, I did inside and outside sales. So I think that it was a skill that served me well in owning a business. One of the things that I would say my audience has struggled with, or people that I've coached have struggled with, is the intimidation factor of selling to a senior level executive at a corporation. And
why? They wear the same pants, the same skirt, the same shoes, they got the same education, they got the same opportunities as you. There's no difference between, sorry, you put a quarter in, you get to go for the full ride now. So this is the way it works. But look, I'm from South Dakota. This is a flyover state, okay? Listen, I figured out I could go off and be in a corporate world and go work for Fortune 100 companies and everything else from South Dakota. Anybody can do it. Trust me. Let me tell you what, because nobody else has got anything over on me, and I've got nothing on them. So it's like, if I could do it, anybody could do it. And, there's no difference between a business in Main Street and a business in Wall Street. The only difference is the number of zeros. And so when you're sitting across from that person, man, I've seen tougher people that I've had to sell to in a Harley Davidson dealership or in a gas station than across in corporate America. I'm putting together a deal right now for a company that's going to be in the neighborhood of about $260, $280 billion when we're done with the transaction. That's basically selling this business the size of AT&T. And we'll have this business done. And you sit across from those people. In this case, we're sitting across from each other in the Zoom room while we have 6 attorneys on the meeting and we're negotiating the points. You can't let people, because of their position, because of what has been given to them or what they have earned, have power over you.
I agree.
Take that space, baby. Take that space, right? And that's what you should do. Fill it, do it. And if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, especially coming from positions that you've been in, because it's something that we talk about all the time, not giving up your power seat. But there's still something that can be intimidating in looking at people's position. And I know that that's something that people in my audience have struggled with. But one question I would have, because I believe in being the solution to your clients' problems, not bringing them additional problems. What are some things that kept you up at night when you were the CMO? And what are some things you see folks in the C-suite saying that is keeping them up now?
Well, it's always figuring out what you should do and what's the right decision. When you're in the role of a corporate job at that level, you control people's lives.
Yeah.
You make people's fortunes or misfortunes. And to have a responsibility of, like in 2008, to have to lay off 8,500 people. I wouldn't wish that on anybody in any way, shape, or form, in order to save the company and save what we could of what was left when we were going through one of the worst economic conditions in the world. Of course, today we're going through a very similar kind of activity now. And if it weren't for, hopefully about a $14 trillion infusion of cash by the U.S. government by the time we're over with this, I don't think other businesses would survive. So when you're at that level, that's what keeps you up at night. Am I doing the right thing? What is the right thing? And sometimes you sit in meetings, Ashley, and you're going like, somebody should do something about this. And then you realize it's you. And so, and then you got to
Wow.
figure it out. And then as you figure it out, you got to be vulnerable enough to ask the right kinds of questions and understand that you don't have to have all the answers. Your job as a C-suite executive is not to be the smartest person in the room. Okay, because you aren't. And because hopefully if you're really smart, there are other people sitting around you that are a lot smarter than you, who are subject matter experts in the things that they do and the skill levels that they have, the experience they have, and the way in which they bring it to the table. And your job is to be the most strategic person in the room. Your job is to lead and move them around like chess players and team players on the field and put the best people on the field at any given time. And that's what keeps people awake. And so right now, for most CMOs and most other C-suite leaders, it's like, well, what are we going to do in the new normal? What are we going to do in this new digital world? Because during COVID, days became weeks, weeks become months, and months became years. And if you weren't ready for this thing, man, you got to jump in and you got to go fast. And now you're going to be faced with real estate that you don't need anymore because we figured out that we could get by without it. And look, it worked fine. And or new dynamics of your kids are running naked behind you, while you're on a Zoom call and whatever, These are the things that we have to start to feel about how are we going to navigate this new field. And by the way, what a great problem to have.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you taking us inside of those boardrooms because so many of the consultants that we work with and that are listening right now are selling to companies in the Fortune 500, and they're talking to those leaders who can bring them in. And they want to make sure they're taking the right approach. So switching from what kept you up to how you liked to be approached when you were looking at vendors and what advice would you give to smaller businesses that are trying to figure out the best approach, the most strategic approach. What advice would you give there?
Well, sometime we'll have to do a little thing I do about how to sell to the C-suite and why selling somebody $5,000 is more important and better to do than selling them $5 million worth of stuff. Because I can show you by selling me $5,000 worth of stuff, I can get you to $5 million a lot quicker than trying to sell me $5 million. Most people who are trying to sell the C-suite don't put themselves in the shoes of that C-suiter to understand the problems that I have in front of me and what I need to do. And you try to sell to me the way that you want to sell to me rather than the way I want to be sold to. So first of all, reverse that out and figure out what am I going through, what's in my mind and what's happening, and understand that my time is like this. Yeah. And that's not because I'm important, but because I got 2 assistants that are helping me with this, and I got this, and my day is planned out. I don't have control over that day. It's sucked up by the way the system is. That's the nature of a C-suiter. Literally, I used to have people who would meet me at my hotel room at 7 a.m. when I'm supposed to leave. Someone would have me an egg sandwich. Someone used to hand me a Diet Mountain Dew. Now it'd be a cup of coffee. And somebody would pre-walk ahead of us just to go hit that elevator button so we wouldn't have to wait for the elevator. That's the time in which, that's what we have available to us. So one of the things I always tell people is get to the heart of the matter, because I'll tell you what, you're going to give me a 40-page PowerPoint presentation. I'm turning to the last slide anyway. Like, what's the point? What is it you're here to help me with? And understand the scale and scope of which I need to have it done, so that we're on the same wavelength. Because, I've had people come to me and say, Jeff, I can, like with sales, I can help you increase your sales by thousands of dollars. Like, dude, you just cost me thousands of dollars. Just tell me that. What do you mean? Why don't you come back when you got a bigger number? And I told him that, and that was an email. And he goes, well, I can help you do hundreds of thousands. I said, you're not catching on. And then he came back with millions. I said, fantastic. Now you have my attention. How can you help me improve my, with millions of dollars? He said, well, I'd like to set up an appointment. I said, well, before I set an appointment, why don't you tell me the specifics of the industries that you've worked with that are similar to mine, or what experience you have in this particular industry or vertical that would lead me to believe that you can now do that? Crickets. Okay. So you're going to have to show me relevancy of the things that you're going to have to do. Show me that I can get reach, and then show me what the reciprocity is between the two of us. And last but not least, if you're going to do a PowerPoint presentation, practice the rule of Moses from the Bible. Moses can do it in 2 tablets or 2 PowerPoint slides with 5 bullet points each. You can do the same thing. He had something tougher to sell. So I used to limit people who came to me. You get 2 slides. 2 slides. Tell me what you're pitching and tell me what I'm going to get. And I used to tell them, if Moses can do it, you can do it. And they would get it done. And we'd have a short meeting in 15, 20 minutes. I could figure it out. If it needed to be longer, I'd extend my time because it was more valuable. There you go.
Yeah, that was so good. I appreciate that a lot. That was some really good insight there. Now, you've mentioned that you've been a part of transactions for 250 companies. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier also is that if we Googled your company, we would find you and the company. What are your thoughts on, for people who are building consulting practices that they eventually want to sell, do you think that they should build the brand more so around the company or around them? And how does that affect the valuation?
Both. You should do it both. I mean, you are the company. Let's be clear. Unless you're as big as AT&T, then you are the company. So don't get over yourself in terms of thinking what that is. So sell you sell the company. Sell the company, sell yourself. I'm still a believer in that and will continue to be. Now, there comes some detriment to that when the company starts to rise and you're so closely tied to the company. Well, then there has to be a strategy to how you start to separate that so that the company can stand alone without you. So that IP that was here or here is transferred into the company and the company becomes the main piece that's driving it. And that's what you want. As a thought leader, you certainly want that because what happens if you get sick? What happens if you're not around? What happens if you die? What happens, if you did something naughty? Whatever those things that you might think about, you've got to be careful when you're bringing those up together. Now, so a brand is nothing but a promise delivered. So focus the promise delivered, the delivered promise around the company, and that you're just a steward who is leading that company. Like I'm the chairman of the C-Suite Network. I am not the C-Suite Network. I help lead it now as a chair leader for the company and so forth, but I have to bring other skilled professionals up through the ranks or as part of the company to start seeing it's more than Jeff Hayzlett. And so I start putting those people forward. And when you start seeing those kinds of things occur, you probably should take a hint that maybe there's other transactions going to start to occur.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's really good as well. Now, one of the ways that I think you can express thought leadership or you can prove that you really are an industry leader and you know your stuff is by being on a corporate board in some advisory capacity. What is your advice for people who are very skilled, who maybe just don't have the connections yet to be tapped for a corporate board? What should they be doing to put themselves in the best position to get some of those board opportunities?
Well, look for younger companies that that aren't going to get the experienced people at the high levels. Maybe that's one. Look at nonprofit groups so you can get some experience there. The third thing is you've got to network like crazy. You get boards, and the reason you get boards is through connections or by doing what you do, and then they see that. It's. I will tell you right now, if you're first of all, there's some huge inequities in boards today, without question. Only 17% of the board's makeup is women. That's ridiculous. Or people of color. That's just freaking nuts. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. And even if we had a moratorium right now, we could not fill those in my lifetime. Period. Even if we said right now every board spot's going to a person of color or to a woman, we wouldn't even get to equity by my lifetime. Just not. So there's lots of opportunity and lots of great things for people who are done. But if you're a white male right now, ain't going to happen for you because they're not looking for you. So think of it as there are great opportunities for lots of different people out there and the way it is. So network like crazy. You get a board job. You get a board job because you're network and you know people. So get out there and start knowing and making the connections and work your way up. My first company that I served on the board wasn't the biggest company in the world. I guarantee you that. And some of the boards that I'm on now are not big companies. I'm on one board. We're trading at about 38 cents on the Canadian Stock Exchange, but we're up 42% in terms of what we are. And it's the cannabis industry, and that's a growing industry. So it's a great opportunity for us. And, in the end, I'll end up making millions of dollars. I've also sat on boards like DocuSign. How did I get on DocuSign? I met the chairman, met the founder, was a big fan of the company, worked my way in and showed the value of what I could help them to do, got on the board. And of course, we took the company public for $21 billion. So not a bad step. So you got to hustle. You got to show your value. You got to get out there and pitch. Don't just sit there. Don't sit there with a catcher's mitt and think people are going to come your way, because they ain't going to come your way. Nobody cares about you. There's a million other people like you. And so, so go prove your value. Go out there and show them what you're going to do.
Love that. Okay, so good advice there. Nonprofit boards, start with smaller companies, reach out to people who are probably on boards, talk to them. But you are going to have to put yourself out there. Moral of the
Oh, big
story.
time.
People
Yeah.
who are listening, you're like, well, I don't know. And I get it because so many of my listeners are like me. We have a lot of Black women listeners, a lot of Black men listening, a lot of people of color listening. And when you say connections, I know for them, similar to me, it's like, who do you know? A part of the reason why there's so much board inequity is because we don't have the same connections across the board. Like everyone does not have the same connections. That's true. But
go find somebody. Go find somebody that has it.
You're going to have to find someone who can help you to start climbing that ladder. There's going to have to be someone that's going to help you out. So good advice.
But with that, Ashley, find a benefactor, find a sponsor, find someone that will help you with that, because that's what we should be doing. Listen, but I made it to the top. When I get to the top, I got to send the elevator back down for everybody else. That's the way it works. And there are people who are in those spots right now who will help you, who will. So reach out, befriend them, get to know them, ask them for their help, ask them how they got there. What could you do? What are the 3 things they did? Find the ways to do that and put it to work. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Most people give up after the first 10 no's.
And you can't do that. And for you all who've been listening for a while, like you already know, I think that I told you guys I did like 20,000 sales calls in a year to make my numbers. I was the top salesperson at the company, and that was with getting like over 19,000 no's. So for those of you listening, like you already know that we talk a lot about not giving up, but also you are going to have to put yourself out there. And nothing bad is going to happen when they say no.
So what? So what if you fail? Oh, big deal. People ask me all the time, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made? I said, I don't know. I haven't done it yet. Meaning that I got more coming. Are you kidding me? If you're going to be a maestro, you got to play a lot of bad notes. If you're going to be really good at business, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. That's the end of it. Yep. So, no one's going to die.
Yep. Awesome advice. So what would you say to someone who's interested in learning more about the C-Suite network and working with you or your companies and getting more connected? Where can they go and where can they start to learn about all the things that you all do?
Well, there's my email right there, jeff@csuitenetwork.com, jeff@c-suitenetwork.com. Reach out to me directly. Come to C-Suite Network. Come to one of our events. Email me. I'll invite you to come to any of our events that we've got, our digital discussions, our forums, our executive briefings, our Friday celebration, cocktail parties. We even got Scotch Sunday. We got wine tastings. We got events going on all the time. I can't even get to them all anymore. I used to go to all of them. And now there's so many going on, I don't even know when they're at. And I was like, oh my gosh, we had that, we did that. So come and join us, find out. We've got C-Suite TV, which we're on Apple, Roku, Amazon Fire. We're on United Airlines. We're in hotel rooms. We're in elevators everywhere. We're in C-Suite Radio, which is our podcast network, over 400, world's largest business podcast network. We got C-Suite Book Club, so all the bestsellers. We got Bestseller TV. We got lots you could come and check out and come and be a part of it. And of course, if you're an author, thought leader, coach, trainer, we've got our C-Suite Network advisors, our most trusted advisors to the C-Suite. So we're constantly recommending them out. It's our most visited page is our C-Suite Network advisors are the profiles of our experts.
Awesome. Well, you all please do check that out. And when the podcast launches or drops, rather, when this episode drops, I'll be linking everything so you can check the show notes to get all the information about the C-Suite Network. Please go back, listen to this again, take notes, check your confidence, make sure it is there, and put yourself out there, guys. And as always, continue to listen to Speak Your Way to Cash. Drop us a review below. If you're coming to Speak Your Way to Cash Live 2021, I will see you there. It's virtual, so you can join anywhere in the world. And again, thank you again, Jeff, for joining us. We really appreciate your time and all the gems that you dropped today.
My pleasure. Thank you.